by who's doing it, where it's coming from. Because if they can't defend against it and they decide to act against us, friends, we are in trouble. The last thing I wanted to talk about, and I will segue into my main essay for today, is our St. Louis Cardinals. They just won a doubleheader from the Cubs. Yeah, I know the Cubs are bad, but they destroyed the Cubs in 2 straight games. It's hard to win both ends of a doubleheader. They did in fantastic fashion. They've won 14 in a row. They're 5 up in the wild card race. Now, about a month ago, the Cardinals had a 2% probability to make the playoffs. That was just last month, okay? Now, they're the odds-on favorite to make the playoffs. Think of all the money you could have made if you had placed a bet last month that the Cardinals would make the playoffs. I mean, nothing's a done deal, but they're, 5 up with 8 games left or something like that, okay? 9 games left, something like that. So they're the odds-on favorite to win. You could have made a ton of money just betting on the Cardinals to make the playoffs. Because a month ago, there was just a 2% probability. And that, my friends, is the topic of today's podcast. Sports gambling. In fact, you have to think, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Does gambling exist because of sports? Or nowadays, do sports exist because of gambling? Don't laugh, because I'm going to make a point that door number 2, the latter versus the former, is exactly what's going on today. Will gambling ruin sports? Has gambling already ruined sports? I mean, look at this. If you listen to the sports shows or watch the sports shows, the highlights include the over and under on the games. The over and under on the games. Not who's pitching, not how they performed, the over and under on the games. In fact, they have poker on the sports networks. Poker. But now, poker's not a sport. I have nothing against poker. I'm not a fan of it. I have nothing against it, though. Playing cards just doesn't trip my trigger, okay? But I understand how people like it, and they watch it. It's a big deal. If people didn't watch it, they wouldn't have it on television, right? But poker is not a sport. Poker is just a game of chance. It's 100% gambling. That type of programming is on the sports channels. Now, haven't convinced you yet? How do you watch the Cardinals if you're in St. Louis? Or most markets, by the way. Fox Sports Midwest? Nope. Not called that anymore. You watch the baseball team, and you watch the hockey team, and you watch fill-in-the-blank team on Bally Sports Midwest. And Bally's, my friends, is a gambling company. So the gambling companies air the sports. Now, in my opinion, sports betting is a disaster waiting to happen. And friends, it may already have happened. And I'll make that point in today's essay. So let's go ahead and get on to today's essay if we can. And it was an article in The Atlantic that I read by a gentleman named Will Licht. And it's a good article. Mr. Licht says, in every Major League Baseball clubhouse, there's a sign. It's a big sign. And it highlights Major League Rule 21D. It's permanently posted in all clubhouses and has been since 1919. That rule deals with gambling. The rule says, plainly, that any player, umpire, or employee of a team or of the league who bets on a game they're not involved in will be banned from Major League Baseball for a year. And if they're involved in the game, the ban is for life. And that's why Pete Rose was banned. Now, elsewhere in these ballparks, there's gambling signs of a different kind. Ads and sponsorships for DraftKings, BetMGM, FanDuel, etc., etc., etc. Now, the Major League rule is in plain view in every clubhouse, including the clubhouse that Pete Rose was in right as he was breaking it. And that's because of the 1919 Black Sox scandal. In fact, that's why Pete Rose has not been admitted back into baseball, because baseball is so scared they're going to have another White Sox scandal that they said, look, you bet on baseball. You're out. That's what the rule says. Pete Rose, who arguably was one of the best baseball players ever, nobody had more hits. Banned from baseball for life. Now, the 1919 Black Sox scandal, that was 102 years ago, friends, but it's still feared by Major League Baseball, or so it seems. Now, the scandal remains shrouded in myth, but it involves 8 players who were banished from baseball for conspiring to throw the World Series, including Shoeless Joe Jackson, who was a good player back in the day. Now, that damage was so devastating that Major League Baseball appointed its first commissioner. Didn't have a commissioner before that. That was Kennesaw Mountain Landis. He was elected commissioner, appointed commissioner, I should say, just to clean up that mess. Now, Landis' success in doing so, along with the emergence of Babe Ruth, is widely considered to have salvaged a sport that had been so rife with gambling and game fixing that many fans and sports writers had suspected that the 1919 World Series was rigged while it was happening. They're watching and thinking, well, this is rigged. Look at these guys. Now, people will forgive a lot in sports, but they do have a belief that the results are legitimate. As soon as they think the results are not legitimate, the game is meaningless. It's like wrestling, where the end is known in advance. Now, today, through the lessons of the Black Sox scandal have been lost to time, there appear to be no such fears about the corrupt effects of gambling. That's a vice, like so many before it, have been monetized. Now, the NFL, the NBA, MLB, the WNBA, NHL, not to mention some college programs, have all signed lucrative deals with sports booking agents like MGM, Bally's, PointsBet, DraftKings. In fact, the Supreme Court struck down a federal ban on sports betting back in 2018. Last year, it was a $26 billion industry. $26 billion. So you understand why the teams want to get a piece of the action. Baseball teams are businesses. Businesses they exist to make money. Winning is one way they can make money, but there's other ways as well. You think winning is the only way a sports team can make money? Then why do the Pittsburgh Pirates exist? Okay. You have to ask yourself that question. Now, last year, $26 billion, and that number is expecting to skyrocket over the next decade, especially when the pandemic isn't slowing down sports. Now, the future of money in sports gambling, as anyone who's watched the first 2 weekends of NFL games can tell you, this is the tsunami of advertisements and the oceans of cash it generates. It puts the integrity of the games we love at risk. Now, for all we know, the next big gambling scandal might be happening as we speak, or may have already happened. Okay. Now, sports are certainly different than they were back in 1919. And some say that the White Sox players were forced to throw the World Series because their owner, Charles Kaminsky, was so tight-fisted that he didn't pay the players much money. Now, there's no question today's athletes are far better compensated than those a century ago. That's what you would say, right? So therefore, they're not going to succumb to financial temptations. So why would a guy who's making $10 million a year want to throw a game? He's already making $10 million a year. Some people say they're overpaid. I don't think they are, but that's another story for another game. Now, the guy who makes $10 million, is he probably going to throw a game? Yeah, probably not. You're probably right, okay? But all athletes aren't professional athletes. Consider the tens of thousands of collegiate athletes who get zero for playing the game. And I'm not talking about just big-time college sports. Sure, college football. You can bet on anything right now. If you want to, you can bet on a Coppin State University volleyball game. Now, think about how easy it would be to fix a volleyball game that nobody other than the people that are betting and the parents of the kids who are playing is really paying attention to. You can bet on that. Let's say Coppin State plays, make up a team, I don't know, San Diego State, okay? Let's say San Diego State is a fantastic volleyball team. Coppin State is just a afterthought. 100-1 odds. You place a $10,000 bet on Coppin State to beat San Diego State. That $10,000 will turn into $1 million if you win. So you have a chance to make $1 million on this $10,000 bet. You go to the top 3 players at San Diego State and say, look, I'll give you $50,000 just to throw the game. Why wouldn't these kids do it? The integrity of the game, please. They're not getting paid for it. When they graduate, they're not going to get paid for it. There's no professional volleyball league. Why wouldn't they? So you can invest $10,000, then grease the palm of 3 players with an additional $150,000 and make $1 million. And who's ever going to find out? Probably nobody. It'd be easy to fix a volleyball game that no one's paying attention to. Now, betting on high school sports, Little League World Series, it's currently not legal in the United States. But you can bet on it on offshore gambling sites. In fact, I know a guy who runs an offshore gambling site. Okay? You can bet on anything you want, including the Little League World Series. Give the kid a Hot Wheel car. He'll throw the game, okay? Now, gambling advocates claim that high school sports will always be off limits in the U.S. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. If the offshore people are doing it, maybe the other guys will want to get involved too, including the government, who wants the tax revenue. Now, other major differences, of course, is technology. You can place a bet in real time on your phone if you're just a few feet away from the game being played. In other words, psst, hey you, Coppin State volleyball player, here's some money. Fake an ankle injury, okay? Then place a bet. He says, okay, I'll take the money. Then you place the bet. Then you win. So you don't even have to place the bet and then bribe the players. You can bribe the players and then place the bet. You don't have to make a bet and place the bet until you know it's a sure thing. Let's say the Cardinals fall behind 5-1 in a game, and you place a bet that they'll make a comeback. That seems like the start, because you can do that. You just don't bet on the games. You can bet on all kinds of stuff. When the first home run will be hit, if they'll come back in the middle of a game, okay? The prospect that you'll be able to bet on individual actions of the game, will this player strike out at bat? Will this kicker miss the extra point? That goes on now. And that's catnip for gamblers. The possibilities for malfeasance, the nearly impossibility of ever knowing for sure what's legit and what isn't, whether the player tried to miss his shot or just missed it, are timeless. Again, if you want to bet on will this field goal kicker for Appalachia State miss or make the field goal, if you whisper in the kid's ear, who is not going to make a NFL roster, whisper in his ear, hey, I'll give you $1,000 if you miss the field goal. He says, okay. You then place a bet on your phone that he's going to miss the field goal. He misses it, and everybody wins. Now, many in the industry claim that technology has become too foolproof for such scandals to arise, that any betting irregularities will be automatically sniffed out by sophisticated artificial intelligence. I don't think so. I think that's just Pollyanna thinking. Players, coaches, referees, shaving points or missing shots, giving free layups that could and probably will happen all over the country. Again, think of this. Let's say the over and